Hello, YouTube. Hey, everybody on Twitch as well. Guys, today we're talking raid group optimization. I think Lenny's going to join us. We already got Daedric with us. There's a huge time difference between myself and Lenny, and so there might be some cross wires here. I'm not really sure, but yeah, we got a lot of raid group composition to talk about. Actually, up on the screen right now is something that he sent me earlier. One of 4 comps that he worked out. I've got a couple as well. I think I've played around and done like 6 or so. And so I think 2 is what I'll present today because some of the other stuff is a work in progress. And honestly, my head is spinning trying to do some of this stuff to the point where I was like, I don't know, just like screaming at the wall. So, anyways, that's what we're about to do. For the day, just so everybody knows, we've got after this, we've got a Godslayer prog for VSS. And then with Nani and everybody from that was in the boss. And then after that, we're going to be running hard mode Dreadcell Reef again with the group from Beyond the Pale Order. All right, I think that's it. I don't even know if I actually want to start with this one, so let me maybe swap this up. And you know what? I got Daedric here with me. Let me bring him in. Daedric, how's it going, man? How's your day?
It's been going great, man. How about you?
Pretty good. Little hectic. Cool. I think this actually displays surprisingly well on the screen. Oh, I don't have my chat bot going. Guys, I'm sorry. Vatra, what's up? Let me get the chat bot going, guys. What am I thinking? What am I thinking here? There we go. All right. So far so good. Yeah, I think we're golden now. All right. Well, Daedric, I know I just sent you this. I'm gonna kind of, I guess, run through this for what I called this my guys. I was just throwing out names, but this one I'm calling wishful thinking. I think in a perfect world, this is a setup that I would run with a group. You'll notice there are some things missing here. I think there are some things that a lot of people would say, why don't you have Ozas on, for example, and there's also very, very little flexibility here with the various skill lines, which kind of sucks. I don't like it, but it does seem like this, to me, this makes the most sense. Daedric, have you had a chance to look at these at all? Have you been thinking about this much, or where are you at on this stuff?
I mean, we've had a few conversations about it, so I've thought about it for a bit. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, have you wasted the brain power? Because I feel like the consensus among many people, even Lenny here, even though he did write something up finally, I think many of us are like, let's just wait and see when Zoss is done doing whatever the hell they're going to do, and then we'll figure it out after that, because it does somewhat feel like wasted brain power to a lot of folks, which I totally understand. I just know I get a lot of questions from people like, hey, what's this going to be? What's it going to look like? And people just kind of want to know. There's honestly some anxiety around it with some people. So yeah, I've been trying to spend some brain power on it. But have you worked up anything on your own, or are you kind of in the wait and see category a bit more?
So I did a lot of work the first week on group comps, including I made a pretty good one, including the full ult rotation, and then they completely gutted pillagers and that completely made it worthless. So
Oh God.
now I'm kind of just waiting to see.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I honestly the only reason I did is because people have been asking me. Otherwise, I wouldn't. I would have probably saved some time. All right. Well, hey Rico, what's going on? Oh man, I got this problem again where chat is. Hey Aeon, Mel, what's going on? Takes notes. Mel says. Guys, hold on one second. We have a technical issue here. Let me close my doc because I can see it popping up on the stream, which is great. But I actually have another window that I actually read it in where it's a little bit larger and it's nothing showing up. So let me try. Hopefully I can just pull it down and pull it back up again, and it works. Oh, sorry guys. Oh, there we go. That's the right button. Uh-oh. Why, Lord, why? Okay, let me turn off the chat bot. Do the old turn it off, turn it back on thing, and see if that works. My apologies, Daedric, as I try to get this figured out. Okay. What is going on?
Oh, sorry, I'm late, boys.
Lenny, what's going on, man?
Not a lot. My bad. I think I must have just mixed up my time zones. I was just
All good,
sitting
man.
around having my breakfast.
No worries, man. Yeah, I mentioned, I was like, I don't know what time it is there, but I know that we're like quite different. Close to 12 hours? I don't even know.
Yeah, it's 8 this
8.
morning.
Oh, it's only 8? I guess it's 8 the other
Mm.
way. So same distance as most
Yeah,
of
it's
Europe. Sorry, man.
fine, but I was. No, you're right.
I've had my coffee. Guys, my chat bot is not working at all, and I really would like it up for this stream. So what we might do here, guys, is I might just do a hard restart, and we might come right back. I think that's probably the best thing to do. So I'm just going to do that real quick, guys. We'll be right back.
Bye.
All right, guys, I think we're back. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, it happens sometimes. And sure enough, just turning it off and turning it back on did indeed solve the problem. So sorry about that. Let me give everybody a second to get back in here. The guys are here still, so give me just one moment and we should be good. Sorry, guys, I am back and just getting everything last touches going on here. I think that we're going to be good. Hey, Mel. Could you intro Lenny again? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, I can. Lenny, can you and actually both of you guys, just so everybody knows, can we do a little intro and maybe I'll do my best and then you guys can fill in the gaps here. So I think Daedric, you've done all the hard modes in the game, right? And I know you've done some score pushing. Is
Yep.
that anything you're missing? Okay, and then you've done that on. I know you play most roles, all roles. I think at one point you were a healer main, and that's been so long ago that I don't think of you at all as even healing. Is that correct?
Yeah, the last time I like healed was like what 2022 or something.
Oh, geez, we're talking about years. Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, and then Lenny, you run quite a few trials. You're a raid lead, and I assume you've done all the hard modes. I know that you run some like pug trifectas in a couple of guilds. Can you give us some other like brag about yourself a little bit here, just so that people have an idea of your experience and everything? Oh, do we lose him?
I think he stepped away.
Ah, okay. Well,
Hello. No, my mic
There
died.
he
I was
is.
like, yeah. I don't know about brag about myself,
well,
but
yeah, just tell
yeah.
us.
The I think you did a pretty good summary there. Like I've done all the hard modes, and I spend most of my time nowadays doing pug tries. Um, that's like probably 90% of my ESO time is
Pug,
doing those.
pug groups.
I've done a lot of them on like every role. I like playing everything. But I'd probably say nowadays like the thing that I do the most of is tanking.
Okay, cool. And then Lyriel saying Lenny has a tripod, and tripods are the best. What else do you need to know? Brag about the puppy until he gets back. I'm sorry, Lyriel. I didn't see the last part. Yeah, Lenny has a very cute tripod animal, a dog of some sort. I'm not sure what breed.
Yeah, yeah. She's like like an English Mastiff. She's pretty big.
Oh yeah.
So like I don't know if I describe her as like, cute, but she is. She is. She's more of like I don't know. I guess that cute in like that big fumbly way. She kind of falls over herself all the time.
Oh,
She's
man.
great.
That's cool. You know what? Let me. I don't know if you have the stream up, or I can send you this real quick. Some of the
I've
stuff
got it
that
up.
I was
I'm
working
looking at
on. Guys, give me just one moment while I do that real quick. My chatbot broke, guys, and then I tried to fix it, and then it broke far worse. So I'm sorry if I'm I'm a little flustered. Cool, I sent you that. So I made up a couple of raid group comps. We're kind of talking about this, how I think you were on board with Miles very much of like, let's just wait and see what happens. And because Daedric was saying,
Yeah.
Daedric was like, I came up with like a whole like comp, even down to like ulti rotations, and like made sure everything was spaced out and whatever. And then that was week 1, and then they totally changed everything, and it was like, well, just wad that up and throw it in the trash. So what I have here is what I'm calling wishful thinking, guys. I made up like probably about 6 compositions, and I looked at them and I was like, yeah, this technically works on paper. And then I was like, this is great. And then I was like, that's not going to happen. That's a bad idea. And if like these people, if like anybody misses their timings because of mechanics or anything else, like this is not a good comp, and like would have to like bring it down and whatever. So some of them were also meant to be more universally used, but I was just like, all of them were way too sweaty. So what I came up with here, why don't I, this is just a proposal, I know we're kind of making this up as we go along, why don't I kind of walk through my comp real quick, and then maybe you guys can ask questions and hate on it for me, and we can chat about it. Does that sound all right? And then we can switch over to some of your smiles.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, awesome.
I love being the hater.
Like, oh, my specialty. Let's go.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks, everybody, for dropping into chat, and it's good to see you. British Mastiffs are huge. Thatcher says one of the biggest breeds that isn't specifically for size. Usable as a mount, Aeon asks. No, not. I don't think so. You keep her pretty lean. I think usually, if you have a pup that or any kind of animal that loses a leg, usually want to keep them pretty lean. So I don't know if she quite have the strength, I'm guessing, for a mount. Oh, Vatcher says definitely usable as a mount. Okay. What's up, Robert? It's good to see you, man. All right. So first up here, we've got skill lines, guys. This is what we're going to see going forward, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. I actually have more information on this than I actually like clipped here, but I was trying to keep it a little bit short. So for everybody out there, skill lines or asking for specific skills that are from a skill line is probably what you're going to see quite a bit of moving forward. So for a DK tank, or I'm sorry, whether for the main tank, we have Earth and Heart from the DK skill line. This is going to provide us with stagger if you want it. A lot of groups, I think, don't use stagger, and that's probably the right choice for them in a lot of situations, just because it's one more thing for the main tank, and a lot of times you just want them to stay alive. For the second skill line, I put here flex, but it really Soldier of the Apocrypha, I think, is a good skill line here. You actually could flex this out to something else if you wanted. Third skill line is going to be Gravelord, and the reason for that is because you're using a Colossus. So there's only one Colossus on this rotation, and it is on the main tank. I imagine the guys are going to have something to say about that. For sets here, we got Lucent Echoes, which is from Lucent Citadel, Crimson, which provides us with a bit of penetration. I will note, depending on our raid composition, depending on what the DPS end up being, what ends up being meta, generally speaking, you're going to be 7, all DPS of the same setup, and then maybe one that has a slightly different setup, or probably has a different setup. Then we've got, Trimmer Scale if we need penetration, or you can kind of flex here depending on what you need. Daedric Summoning on the off tank, you've got Daedric Summoning, and the reason for that is you're going to be dropping Atros as often as you can for that major Berserk. Winter's Embrace, somebody needs to be using it. It doesn't matter who it is, but I think it makes sense on the off tank. And the reason for that is that you're going to be providing major resolve for the entire group, and you can even do that for the main tank. That this is a standard thing that a Warden healer would typically do even before, but now we can move it over to a tank. The rest of this skill line also makes a lot of sense for a tank. One thing I'll note is Arctic Blast is AoE brittle as long as you're running double ice staffs, so that's also something that's new and I think pretty cool. And you can precast it before you even enter combat to make sure you have brittle up all the time. You could also run this on the main tank. And then the third skill line, and you'll see this for all three of my, the healers and the off tank here. So 3 of the supports is you're going to be running siphoning, and you're just going to be chugging potions on cooldown with potion cooldown reduction glyphs. It's a little bit crazy. Maybe it doesn't make the most sense. You could do something else, sure. But if you want to drop Atros basically at will, that's how you can do it. And then for sets, Pearlescent Ward, and then either PA or you can flex this out. There could be a couple of things. We'll talk about that in a second. Spald of Ruin or Baron Zadris. Baron Zadris just provides more ulti gen if you want to go that direction, making those Atros more, more plentiful. And then after that, we're going down to the healers. We got Curative Rune Forms, which you're running Glyphic of the Tides. So you're dropping this. You actually can drop it technically. If you do everything right, you can drop it on cooldown. So you can actually have 100% uptime with Glyphic of the Tides if you want. And then Flex there. So I think Living Death or Daedric Summoning are the way to go if you want even more ulti gen. If you go with Daedric Summoning, that's the best thing, but you're really just doing it there so you can reduce the cost of your ultimate by 15%. So I believe Glyphic is 200, so that brings it down to 170. However you want to go there, but that just makes it where you can drop it on that 15-second. It lasts for 15 seconds, so it makes it where you can drop one every 15 seconds. Sets Spell Power Cure, then either Powerful Assault if you're not running it on your off tank, or MK. So I would think, probably MK, and then run PA on your tank. And then for your monster set, Symphony of Blades if you need it. Or Baron Zadras for more ulti gen. You do need to go full ulti gen to have that Glyphic. You don't need it every 15 seconds, but if you want to go crazy, that's how you do it. And then for our second healer, we got Green Balance, Living Death, Siphoning. Living Death is the second best ulti generating skill line after Siphoning, and you can get close to what you can with Siphoning without any potion cooldowns. So about you get 10 ultimate every 16 seconds. Obviously, that's in an idealized situation. You're also running Trample on most of your supports here. You're running it on both your healers. You're running it on your off tank. You actually change it up so you don't have to run it on your main tank, even though you could in a lot of situations. It just seemed like a bit much. And again, then Rojo. So we're not using. So you could do War Machine and instead do stacks. And in which case, so Rojo is 2 sets. And if you swap it out for something like War Machine or Master Architect, those do the same thing, just one's mag, one of them stam. Then what you would do is you put one on this healer, and then you need to move one of the other sets to this healer. So move PA, for example, from the off tank onto this healer, and have the off tank do the other Master Architect or War Machine in that case. And then this healer is the only person doing a horn. You only have one person doing a colo. Person horns, they're extending the colo because they're wearing Nazare, and they're horning every 30 seconds. As soon as they see a colo come up from the main tank, they're horning to extend that, and that provides you with 100% uptime on the Colossus debuff and on Warhorn as far as the max stats, but you're ignoring having major force in this situation. This is also set up right here for a situation where your group has extra critical chance. So that is going to be not running. So that's going to be Arc, Nightblade. Oh my God. Someone help me out. Arc, Nightblade, and what are we running right now? Something else. Versus running Arc, Crow, and I just can't remember the third skill line right now. And that's what's kind of the meta for the beam builds.
Hello. Sorry, my mic kept cutting out. Are you talking about? Sorry, were you talking about the crit line for like having 3 crit lines? Arc Blade and then Templar, the third one.
Oh well, whatever is. I don't think you actually need it. I think just Arc and Blade do it, right? So I think it's just whatever is meta right now for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Do you remember what it is? What's everybody running right now?
I mean, it depends, right? So like, there's the Arc Blade Crow, but that kind of got hit. So there's also the option for the Arc Blade and the Pla. If you're going for the beam build option.
Okay.
Like if you're running a beam. So depending on which one you pick, one needs like way less crit, one needs like no pen.
Yeah. Cool. And then again, you swap out certain sets here. So if you're running, if you're not actually running that setup, and you might have more penetration if you're running the Crow line, or your DPS are running it, then you would switch up here. And if you're in a situation where you need a little bit of both, then you're on your off tank. That's where you'd put something like EC for a little bit of extra crit chance there. So what the DPS end up like is going to change everything. But yeah, that's the setup, guys. Let me know what you think. And just trash it, by the way. Just totally lit into it.
You want to go first, Adrian?
Sure, I'll go first. All right, so first thing I'm noticing.
What up, Wampus?
On main tank, coloing every 30 seconds. What's all the sources of ultimate for that? That's going to be pretty tight.
Yeah. I actually had a whole table and I was kind of looking at it. So I am assuming that you hold on. Now I have to pull it up real quick. I did the math and I didn't think it was too bad. So you get three uh, as base, and then maybe I was assuming you don't have to look at it. Give me 1 second. Keep going.
Okay. What else?
Oh no, I'm trying to pull up my other monitor and it's just
Yeah, I'd say
black.
the main thing is like you said, it's pretty a sweaty comp. So what ends up happening is if anybody messes up their ulti gen, then everything just gets thrown out of whack, and then you're just gonna start missing all your buffs because everybody's off sync.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I know what it is. I got it up here finally. Sorry, I couldn't get my other screen up. So that flex bot, if they're running, if they're running Beer and Zadris, it's super easy. So since they're only coloing, it's 175 ult every 30 seconds, and so that's 5.83 ultimate per second is what you're looking to get from them. With a base ulti gen of 3, if you it really just kind of depends what you're running. If you're running Minor Heroism, that's going to give you about 0.6. If you're running Baron Zadris, you're going to get a couple from that most likely. If you can at all trample or do, obviously vamp drain, those things are all going to put you over. I think they're running the Catalyst line on that one. No, they're not. Okay, yeah, I guess if you wanted to get sweaty with it, then they would run Catalyst and also be drinking potions, but that's a bit much. So I guess it really just depends. But I don't think it's too bad since you get 3 as a base, and then you've got multiple ways that you can get the rest of the ultimate. So if you're running decisive, that's going to give you a little bit more. If you run, so you're running a DK, you're going to get the 0.5 equivalent of 0.5 because you generate what is it like 4 ulti every 8 seconds, or maybe it's 3 ulti every 6 seconds when using your Igneous Shield, just from the passives from the skill line there. Your oh man, whatever the skill line is called, Earth and Heart skill line. So that's another 0.5. So I think there's quite a few. So like if you just run, if you're just proccing your Earth and Heart quite often, and then you're running Minor Heroism, that puts you at 4.1 or whatever, and then just without counting decisive, without depends on what else you run. I think you put them in Baron, and it's pretty easy as long as you're keeping up Ellie Sus.
yeah, that definitely works. But like I was saying, though, it's kind of in a Wonderland situation where everybody's doing everything perfectly. So
Yeah,
if you do this with like pugs or whatever, you're just not going to get the results you want from it because, yeah, you need a lot of practice for this to be good.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I actually have a pug one here. I was kind of assuming that this was like an organized group that you could kind of talk to everybody with, and my thought was that, because in a lot of situations, I don't know, this might be too much, but I think you can trample pretty easily on the MT. And if you really wanted to, so I was going to make a build for this, but you could also put the Templar skill line that gives you block. You can block while, be considered blocking for 2 seconds while casting a channeled ability. And that's 2 ulti a second from Major Heroism by running Trample. And I think that also makes it like super easy to do. And if they're running Baron as well, like that's it. Like they'll have more than enough to colo every 30 seconds. I think even without keeping trample up 100% of the time. But if they're doing hard mode Teleria, like I don't know if they're trampling in that situation for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up is like the harder fights. You're going to have some real gamers, at least on your main tank and off tank, because,
I mean, even
yeah, to keep up all their
even
casts.
even on
Okay.
a less hard fight, it's having a 2-second channel inside of like a stagger rotation will be a problem for a lot of people. But I got some questions, if I may.
Yeah.
Well, first thing is like, well, there's sort of two that are the prerequisites. So I'm assuming the roster is around like DPS that are using the arc beam, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're not light attack setups, they're the arc beam setups. Yeah, I'm gonna assume if it's like, because I think this is generally like the school of thought. If you're going down the Arcanist Beam DPS route, then most likely for like ease of use, you're gonna pair it with the Necro skill line. You can pair it with other lines, but it's probably just going to be the Necro one for like ease, even though they nerfed it, which means you don't need the pen at all. So like Crimson and Tremor can just fucking disappear if that's the case. And I'm sort of assuming that that would be the case. And then the second thing is like,
and you're
is
saying
the
you're saying that mostly because the rotation is easier.
well, yeah, I mean the rotation's easier. The like it's also sort of the only setup that really is getting a huge benefit still to the actual like beam build. So the only other real alternative that I've seen is like you can try and squeeze the Templar in for the Jesus beam, but like then you're half the fight you're not using your AoE, so it just I don't know. It doesn't they kind of end up about the same anyway. So, but one of them doesn't need all the pen, so it's like more of the free real estate, consistent, if that makes sense. Like
What
if
up,
you're
Junior?
going down the beam build route,
Okay.
And it still has a bunch of nice passes in there, like it still increases all your other dots. It still
Right.
gives you the pen. It still gives you the 20% crit chance below 33% health. It still gives you all of that nice stuff, as well as detonating siphon being able to give you your crit, and then inspired scholarship giving you your major sorcery, so you can use your heroism or your tripods, and then you can have your banner with the minor courage, but sort of beside the point. Kind of means that Crimson and Tremor aren't really necessary, in my eyes anyway. But then I wonder, like, okay, is this what level of sort of group comp are we aiming for right here? Like, are we trying to find a balance between like optimization and ease of use, or is it like, are we going
Yeah.
down the
I think
yeah?
that I think so. Yeah, this is it's a great question, such a hard one to answer because I'm thinking if I was running a group and that was in the boss, that I could get people on board with this if we were doing difficult, probably even if we're not doing difficult stuff. I think we could get
Mm,
people on board with this. That's kind of the niche because the first thing I wrote up was again it was beyond wishful thinking. It was I was living in La La Land and I was like, this is insane. Like, yeah, if everybody plays perfectly, this will work, but otherwise, it's kind of it could go to hell. What happens with one of these people die,
mm,
kind of thing.
yeah,
So,
that's fair.
like, I
Yeah,
was only
no,
running War Machine and Master Architect on some of them.
yeah, yeah, okay. Um, yeah. Well, in that case, yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, if we want to be like optimized, but also we want it to be sort of friendly to use, then straight away I'm like, oh, the alt gen on the main tank is like is a rough thing. But because you can get rid of the Crimson and the Tremor, you're in a situation where like you can just slot TT and Archdruid there, and then you don't have to worry about this Colo every 30 seconds, and you have like another alt that you can like use to plug whatever gaps, which would be really nice. Um, that's my thoughts for
Yeah,
that
yeah,
initially. That also means like Rojo can come off the Rojo healer, and then you're like, you can squeeze something else there so that you can start either looking at Incratus or you can look at like Ozazan. So then you have like that survivability element for the group, either one.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, that's like my initial thoughts. I don't know like how sold I am on the Glyphic at will. Like I feel like Atro at will, if that SPC MK healer, because I'd assume they're going to be MK and you keep PA on the OT here, um, since the OT has that free spot. If they're going for like the SPC MK and they're gonna sort of alt bot with the siphoning and the reduced potion glyphs, I feel like having them Atro at will
Hey, Niobe.
is better because you get higher berserk uptime, and then you have the tank. If you want to do a glyphic, you can have it on the OT maybe, but I would probably be like inclined to just not have the glyphic and either have a spare horn on the OT or a spare colo for like when the uptimes go down. I don't know. That's my thoughts initially on the roster.
Yeah, yeah. I think those are all really good points. I think wherever I've had like a penetration set, there should be a star there that says, "Hey, swap this out if you don't need it," and then some options there or what have you. I think, yeah. So I think those were all good points. The Atro can drop about every 11 seconds, 12 under 12 seconds in like an idealized situation. Um,
It's on the OT.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I
okay.
I OT a lot where I'm dropping trample and using Vamp Drain, and I think it's really fun to being an ulti bot. um,
Oh, I mean, yeah, I agree for sure. Like the OT is especially on like certain trials has the opportunity to get the most ult gen, like even
yeah,
more than the healers.
yeah,
My reasoning or my logic with swapping them is that no matter what trial, the healer can always do the ult gen, whereas there's like some trials where the OT just physically can't. Like
oh,
they're just too busy.
that's a fair point. So just like a more generically useful thing.
Yeah, more
Yeah,
generically, it's like, oh, the healer's always going to be able to be doing like the ult battery thing, but there's half the trials in the game where, or half the fights, I guess, where the OT's like, I'd love to vamp drain right now, but I'm getting my cheeks clapped by all these A bombs trying to like stack them,
yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, and just like my own critiques of this, like I think a lot of groups really like Ozazon. I don't feel like it's we lived without it for a long time. So unless you're just on a fight with a major heal check, um, I just yeah
I agree. I mean, I would be more inclined to be like, oh, I'm not going to put Ozas on there. I'd put in Kratos and be like, let's just get more damage or like a second Spalder. Um,
yeah
but yeah.
yeah. Some of that stuff I was like, ah man, like Incratus is just so far down the list for me right now since damage is going up so much that I'm kind of like because you got to have a skill. You got to choose a skill line just to run it probably, or run. It takes up the bar space is so limited right now. But yeah, those are all very very points. Well, let me jump over. I appreciate all the critiques and all the feedback there. Let's jump over. I got a pug one that I'll pull up. We can just go pretty briefly because it should be fairly similar. And I might need to resize it. Hold on.
And the other thing that I would say in that one is you'd probably want to make a note for the DPS that, like, even if they're running the Arc Blade, if you're not worrying about major force uptimes and you just have LE, they need to run Fighting Finesse as like one of their CP
Right.
for the crit cap.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And some of that stuff, if I'm being honest, I didn't spend that much time because I just feel like we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's like the caveat to the whole thing is
Yeah.
okay, well, it all depends on what the DPS actually run, right? Like
Right.
it really depends on what ends up being the best performer in trial from a DD perspective, because it really informs what you're supposed to wear.
Yeah. Well, cool. So this is so I was like numbering these, and then I went back through and gave them names, guys. It's still very much a work in progress. But so the next one up here is what I would consider for like a pug group, and not like I don't even know, like an organized pug. I would, or a pug group with some people that weren't brand new. So hopefully they had some stuff. So here we've got still Earth and Heart. I don't think you're going to be running Stagger, but you still want Igneous Weapons, absolutely from that skill line. So why not run it? You can also run Igneous Shield if you want to be able to use a shield to be able to get back a Magicka, or I'm sorry, Stamina. After that, you've got flexibility. The main thing I think about this is like you don't, and Miles, you pointed this out to me when we were talking earlier in the week, but like you don't know what the hell people are going to bring. Someone's gonna see some meme build and they're gonna show up with it, and you're gonna be like, "Hey, dude, are you gonna do minor or major or major breach like on your tank build, buddy?" Like, I'm cool. It's cool you got 100,000 HP of shields, but we need major breach. So that's what we got going on there. Just a bit of flexibility, hopefully. 4 sets. In this situation, you're running both critical damage sets and penetration sets because, again, you just don't know what the DPS are going to bring. You've got 2 horns that are horning once every 60 seconds, so hopefully ulti gen on those people should be very easy. And then I did a Colossus every 30 seconds on the off tank, but I think really in that I put Spalder or Flex. I really think they're running Baron Zadras, and if they run Baron Zadras and they're the off tank, again, like Miles said, there's going to be some Lenny said there's going to be some situations that it's just not going to happen. But that's any group, like a pug group, like you're just not going to get ulti every time you want it. So maybe they're coloing every 40 seconds, and that's the best you can hope for, I think. Pearlescent Ward there, EC or PA. I think in this case you're going to be running PA on one of your healers, so you're really going to be running EC again for that extra. And you can tweak this depending on what you have in your group. The only thing they are required is to have Grave Lord, and then somebody needs to be running the Winner's Embrace skill line in this situation. That could be your tanks, that makes the most sense, but it could be a healer as well, and that would also be totally fine. Then for healers, we got one in green balance. You absolutely want green balance because that's where you're getting the extra health from a passive in that skill line. With healing people, gives everybody 10% extra health, and the Winner's Embrace is for major resolve, and that's a unique buff on the Winner's Embrace skill line. And that's the only, literally the only place to get it in the game. And then for sets, we got Rojo, we got Naz on one of the healers. We also have Naz on the main tank, again, trying to extend the Colossus whenever they can. I liked Miles' idea about running TT on maybe on the main tank. If you don't need all of the penetration or all of the crit, you could do that. That's a great idea. And then for the other healer, you're running SBC and probably PA. You're not really worried about MK in this situation unless you're getting a little bit more optimized. Honestly, I think I should just yeet that from this, but SBC and PA should be very easy for a healer to keep up. And then Symphony of Blades is probably what you're going to go with, but you could also run a Spalder, and you could have 2 of them in group if you wanted. Thoughts on this one, guys? Hey, Lil Mex, what's going on?
I think it's totally totally achievable for like a pug. It's like pretty simple, which is nice, and it still is like got 95% of everything you need. You probably don't want 2 Nazes. That's the only thing I can think of. That's literally the only thing that I'm like, yeah, probably no point.
Yeah, it just helps the colo go the full 30 seconds is the idea.
Yeah, I'm just imagining if you've got Naz and 2 colos,
you only have 1 colo here.
Fine.
Oh,
there's 2 on the roster.
Oh, there is 2 on the roster. Oh, you're
Yeah.
right. No, I think the Naz extending them because the colo will last 17 seconds plus each time it hits. So what is that, 19 or 20 seconds? And then a horn being 250 ult will extend 12.5 seconds on that. So that puts it at 30 seconds for the colo. I think you need 2. Or what am I missing here?
I don't know. I'm just imagining that, like, one person is Naz extending like the first colo, say, and then when that full extension runs out, the next colo comes out, and likely by the time that's like getting low, they're just the same person's Naz extending again. If that makes sense.
I think so.
I don't actually know. It's really hard to imagine because like I'm so used to what the alt gen looks like with pillagers in the group, so it's easy to like not know.
Yeah. I think in this situation, everybody on the supports like is gonna have their ult, even if they're not doing ult gen things. That was I kind of think the idea here is it was just passive, and then if you get the Naz and they have enough for a horn, it's going to extend a colo for the full 30 seconds that the resource or increase for the horn. Is kind of the idea here. Nobody has to run trample. Nobody has to, do anything crazy, I guess. Hey,
Just
Jessica.
kind of imagine, right? Like, because the assumption is that the first extension of every fight is always 500, not 250, right?
Sure.
Because people are assumedly going to come in. So then, like, you can kind of piggyback off the fact that the first one is lasting like 45 seconds. So then that means like when that first 45 seconds runs out of extended colo, then you get the second colo, which gives you another 17, which effectively means the first dude that horned has like a minute to get his horn back with the Naz to extend it again. Do you know what I mean? So it's
yeah. I think
piggyback into it for quite a while. So it's only like where you might run into issues after like a 4 minute long fight. Where you're
Yeah.
like, oh,
Well, I think I'm thinking that we just wiped. So now we got to like restart. So we probably don't have 500 ult,
FM.
or any number of other things. So, and in this case, basically you tell the person who's, I guess you do have a bit of a rotation here, but whoever someone colos, then the person horns, and then you're assuming the other two people don't have any ultimate, and you're also assuming the fight is going to last a really long time. And I think in this situation, like once you get in the rotation, it's kind of like, okay, as soon as you see, if you're a horn person, as soon as you see the duration of horn, not major force, but the actual resources go down, that's when you wait for a colo. Because the colo
Yeah.
person is looking at the same thing. They colo, then you horn, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm thinking of a more things have gone wrong, or people aren't walking into a fight with 500 ult, and the fight is lasting way more than 4 minutes, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, Daedric, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, a few things. One, I think it was mentioned earlier, but if you run TT in this comp, then you can swap on the colos out for an Atron, basically. All the support ults you need are on your support, so, and they can, a few of them can just fire on will, so you'll get better up times on stuff because of that. Other than that, I do like this comp because it's pretty similar to what we have now. So asking people to bring this stuff is like not nearly as much of an ask.
Might be a good like early, even if we come up with something better for composition, it might be good like the first 3 weeks or whatever, while everybody's grinding up skill lines. Cool, cool. All right, well, there we go. Lenny, I want to pull up yours, man, and talk about them. Is there? I have them in order. Do you want to start with the first one, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, go for it. I sent, yeah, that's fine if you want to. Go for it.
All right, guys, give me 1 second here. Jessica says, I'm totally new to ESO, but I was thinking about the new system opening a chance to make a buffer build. Yeah, the support in ESO, that's basically what you are, Jessica. So good, a good thought there. Let me see if I can't move these.
I did send my little Excel sheet as well.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I just didn't have a chance to, but I think this will work pretty well. I can blow them up here.
Yeah, the general like gist of them is essentially very similar.
Cool. So I'll just run through this for everybody, especially for those who might just be listening. So first off, on the MT, we're taking 2 DK skill lines. We're taking Earth and Heart, and we're taking Ardent Flame. Earth and Heart, for all the reasons we just talked about, you need igneous weapons. Even if you're not staggering, you absolutely need it. But if you are staggering, there it is. You can also get a little bit of passive ulti and potentially stamina recovery if you're running igneous shield. That's up to you. There are better shields available, but it works fine and it gives you back stamina, so that's kind of cool. And it depends on your build, depends what your comfort level. If you're staggering, that costs stamina, so that's why that's important. The second skill line is the Ardent Flame skill line, and oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting why we're taking that. We need it for Encratis, but oh yeah, for Engulfing Flames. So that's extra fire damage for the entire group. 4 sets, we're running EC, so Elemental Catalyst for extra critical damage, Pearlescent Ward for extra, it's just a buff set, gives you more weapon and spell damage. Excuse me, and then we're running Encratis, as Miles mentioned earlier, the reasons he likes that. Potentially a little bit of extra safety from fire damage and increased fire damage. I believe it's by 5% off the top of my head. And then notes here, needs stagger for minor, minor brutality. Minor brutality is really important, guys. That is in the Earth and Heart skill line. We're just not talking about it. I have a whole list of buffs. I don't know if we'll have time, but I have a whole list of buffs that we could go through and talk about. Like you need these from somewhere, and so that's going to be your the class specific version of increased weapon damage, and so you get it here. So that's why that's incredibly important. That's your second Warhorn. He notes off tank. We've got Crow, Warden, and Innie. Looks like we're going Crow for the Colossus, so that's going to be not. Gravelord? Yeah, that's Gravelord, right?
Yeah. So I've like, because when I was doing them, I just assume that like you know, when someone reads it, they know the skill line that I'm thinking of, and I've just put the bloody like, oh, but yeah, it would be Grave Lord, and then the tank skill line for the Warden is the one that I'm referencing, with the one with Polar Wind and Frostcloak.
Yeah, Winter's Embrace. Yep.
Yeah.
Or I think it's Winter's Embrace. Or that's a skill. But yeah, it's Winter something. And then you can flex. And then 4 sets here, Lucent Echoes. Yeah, that's right. Zorin, which is also from Lucent Citadel, it just provides a little bit of extra magicka and stamina, max magicka and stamina, which gives you the equivalent of weapon and spell damage, guys, for those who don't know. Basically, take the increase in magicka or stamina, divide by 10. It's actually like 10.5, but whatever. And you get an idea how much weapon or spell damage that would give you. I think it's like 160-ish, if I'm going off memory. Spalder here on the off tank. Frostcloak is the important skill you need to run from the Winter's Embrace skill line. Sorry guys, you're probably telling me in chat. I just, with 3 people on the call, it's usually best. I read the chat, but I usually don't necessarily respond to everything. Or if I do, it's because we're covering it for everybody. So this is your spare colo. For healer 1, we have green balance. It looks like, so we've got both of them with a Warden skill line. I think that's green balance on both of them. We've got the
We're budding seeds on both.
Yeah, budding seed.
Sure.
Cool. I saw that in some of your other ones. And then when you're saying blade, I assume we're talking about the
line with the catalyst passive.
siphoning skill line, which has the siphoning catalyst in it. Yeah, guys, if you're running that skill line, please, before you put on radiating regen, put on funnel health. It's better. It's mo better, and it also generates ultimate for you, and it can be a huge heal, especially in a trial group. So please don't put radiating regen before you put on funnel health. And again, casting that will proc some passives, give you a little bit of passive ulti gen, so that's nice. Gives you even more ulti gen. And then Plar skill line here, power of the light, or not power of the light. That's a skill. Something with light, right? In it.
The restoring light.
Restoring light.
Yep.
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
You're basically just taking that skill line to get ritual, and there's a bunch of passives that slightly increase healing. So you're just taking it so that healer is like the main healer. They're the one that does like the majority of the healing, because they have budding and ritual and the nice passives.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, man, I looked at it. Like if you go with like green balance, and then the restoring light is good, and then like living death, or you could probably do siphoning is good too.
Yeah, the siphoning also has it. It has like a bunch of increased healing passives. So those 3 together, you'll do like pretty significant healing.
Well, and also you get like passive. So the Plar gives you like a passive. I think it's passive healing buff on that one, and there's just some crazy stuff you can do. Warden, if people are low health, it gives you major vitality, I believe. So a ton of extra healing there. Yeah, do you want to actually go through it, Miles? Like I was just trying to be courteous.
No, you
chime in.
Going.
You'll chime in. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, you chime in with all the important stuff. Cool. All right, and then we're noting here from both healers. We'll just go over this: major and minor heroism, and like plus ulti gen. So you're going for ulti gen. If you have a choice, that means decisive on your front bar, guys, or probably on your front bar. You're still probably going to run into used on your back bar with your destro staff. So keep that in mind. You're not looking at plus healing stuff. You're looking at ulti genning, depending on the content. And then we're running 3 infused potion reduction. So any of mine that I had, guys, that also said the siphoning skill line, I'm also assuming that you're running 3 infused potion reductions, and you're just chugging potions every 21 seconds. So it's kind of insane there. I was trying to think of like what would be like a cheeky name for like to call a group where like most of your supports are just chugging potions. Like, I don't know, the drunken monks or something. We got to come up with some name. Anyways, a lot of builds are doing that, and I want to point out too, for those who don't know, by ZOS changing Pillager's Prophet, they have basically reduced the number of options we have in a even pseudo optimized group by a significant amount. Because if you want optimal play, you got to take ulti genning skill lines on all of your supports, or as many of them as you can squeeze in, and I think that's kind of unfortunate. We got a horn on our Warden Blade Plar healer, And then the other one is going to be we're taking sorcerer skill line. That is going to be the Daedric summoning. So Daedric summoning gives you the Atro, access to the Atro, which is what they're doing. It says over there on the right, Atro bot. And it also provides them with a 15% reduction to via passives to, I think it's called like Power Stone or something, to all of your ultimates. So that reduces the cost of them. We've got PA, MK, and then Ozazon. So Ozazon for a bit of safety there. It gives extra resistances. That's the main reason most people want it. MK, for those who don't know, is martial knowledge. You have to keep your stamina below 50% and then light attack mobs. You should always be light attacking in an optimized group, even as a healer. And so it gives 8% buff, but when you average it out, it gives the equivalent of a 5% constant buff to damage. But it is a bit bursty, I suppose. And then, you got PA and MK, so you're probably just going to be keeping your stamp pretty low in a lot of situations, which you can tweak via various ways. Although, if you're chugging potions, that could be very hard.
Yeah, I would recommend probably don't do the trust stats for that one. I wouldn't
Yeah,
be doing the trust stat potions.
cheap like
But
trash
yeah.
mag potions or something. Um, Miles, or Lenny, I'm sorry. Why Warden on both healers? Why that?
The because budding seeds is just the best hop in the game. So you want both of them to have budding seeds. That's basically
It is really good.
yeah.
And the
That's literally it. It's just it's a synergy. It's such a good heal. It only targets 6 people. Having 2 of them is just fucking amazing.
yeah,
Basically.
yeah, and it's a great heal because you put it on somebody. It's a heal over time, and then it's a burst heal at the end. So you're only putting heal over times on people when things are going okay. And if things get shady in 6 seconds, it's going to do a burst heal and top everybody off anyway. So it's so short that the chances that someone's going to almost die and budding seeds is not about to like proc for its like big heal are basically 0. So yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and it's dirt cheap. Yeah, Robert's pointing out, and also Robert in DSR hard mode, the warden healer in the group is always gapping me on heals, and budding seeds is a big part of that. Robert Miller asked here, are we gonna put this on the website? Robert, whenever I put out a video saying, hey, here's what I think, I will put it on the website. Right now, this is like preliminary stuff. I can put it in the Discord, but there's no point in putting it on the website because, again, this could all change on Monday or tomorrow or whatever. So until the patch hits, I won't put anything up there. Okay, and then for all of the DPS, we got one DD in jail, and I do on all of mine too. I shouldn't actually show what they're running. Here, we're running a War Machine setup. So one of the DDs is in War Machine and then Zens. In my setups, they would all be just in Zens, and they could have a choice of sets.
That's where my the to be decided will come in. So because of the old gen taking such a big hit, I kind of need to see how that plays out. Like, it's a theme across all the rosters that come up is like when we're doing the Slayer, I've got one of the Slayers there on like the Colo jail DD. But it'll be a thing of if the alt gen has been like significantly impacted, then like Zoran on the OT is gonna have to go, and the War Machine gets moved back up there to the OT, and then the Colo orders get swapped. So the jail DD would become the spare Colossus if you need one, like when Voln gets down, and the main Colo that comes with the War Machine that could offer it would be on the OT. But that's the only sort of thing that I'm like, it's really going to depend on like how it actually plays out once we like get to run. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Here's a question for you guys too, and I think this matters to a lot of people. What classes do you? So people are asking about what is a. Robert Miller asks. Actually, let me read it. For healers, I assume base class won't matter since it's a mix of lines and basically no scribe skills from class scripts. So, and he's asking about. So, yeah, I have an answer to this. If you guys want to chime in first, though. Hey, Realish, what's going on?
Yeah, I think for like from a support, like tank or healer perspective, 90% of the time the base class is just like completely irrelevant, except if you want to use like Arcanist skills, then like you want to be an Arcanist base class if you're happening to do anything, because the crux is so good. The same thing pretty much applies for DPS though, with the exception of like if you want to do some sort of necro setup, you want to be a like where you run Corpse Burster, then you want to be a necro based class for their class script and for the access to their Corpse Burster. But yeah, otherwise I don't think it matters for like anything.
Yeah, Corpse Buster. I would have forgot to mention that. Daedric, do you have anything to add? Anything you want to chime in with?
Make 12 arcs.
Make 12 arcs.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So I will just reinforce. Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Lenny said there. I would add. So I think for healers, guys, having a Nightblade, because Ultigen is such a thing. You're never going to go wrong with having one Nightblade skill line. You can see that some of these skill lines, some of these healer setups, actually, I think both of his do not. They contain Wardens, but none of them contain Arcanists. I think it would be fine to swap out that Warden for an Arcanist, so I think you would be okay there. And you're gonna be just fine, right? Like it's a really good, the Warden skill line has the best heal in the game. Sure, we've been living without it for a long time. We could continue to live without it, and it would be okay. And that Arcanist skill line gives you a bunch of plus healing stuff still. So don't think that it's the end of the world. Warden is great for healer. Arcanist, Blade, those are the top three that I can see that you're always going to want. Templar, yeah, there's a skill line. You could have a Templar base and go into all of these things in certain situations. Not always going to be desired. Same thing with a Necro. Necros make amazing healers with the Living Death. That's pretty much always going to be welcome because it's the second best ulti generation. And, but otherwise, yeah, it just kind of depends on your group. And that's what's kind of a bit unfortunate about some of the changes. For tanks, DK, you're always going to want an Earth and Heart skill line. Good news is most people already have a DK. For tanks, it's a little weird because you could be in a situation like there's not really one dedicated Crow tanking skill line. So it's like, are you running a Colossus? Are you running Living Death? Like, if you're not running Colossus, there's no reason to have one, which is really odd because most people have a Crow. So really, I think a Warden, because you got to have one in a group with the Winner's Embrace skill line. And so I think that's really the only thing. Everything else is flexible. Again, there's a situation where if you want Ultigen, having a Nightblade tank, having one skill line from that is also going to make a lot of sense. So it's like DK still at the top. After that, I mean, Arcanists are also amazing. So one of the things that Robert Miller said is for healers, so assuming the base class won't matter since it's a mix of skill lines and basically no scribe skills, that is actually not true. Scribe skills, you might use them. You probably will still use them. And having Crux from a Arcanist is going to be the important thing. And then for DPS, just like Mild said, like Arcanist is the way to go because you're going to want the Crux generation. The only second to that is a Crow, and having it for being able to run Corpse Buster is really, so hopefully that kind of explains all of that pretty well.
Yeah, that pretty much stands for like, in my mind, all DPS, because like, even if you do like a non-beam single target build, they all have like the Arcanist in there, and they need the bloody Crux banner to like use the Tentacular Dread. And then the only other setup I've seen that's like, the ones that don't have the Arcanist all use like the Necro with Corpse Burster. So it just kind of, that's just the way it works out. In terms of like passing 170 plus K, that's just how it works out.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to do a video, guys, talking about all the skill lines because I think people are asking that question a lot, and I'll probably go into it in more depth. We'll see what happens. Realish asks, hey, Knight, can you make a video on useful add-ons for the console players for the update? Realish, I have bad news, man. Add-ons for consoles are completely separate than add-ons for PC. They have different requirements because consoles are different. And so new add-ons are either going to have to be developed or old add-ons modified. And so there is no list of what's coming. I have no idea what people are developing. I have tried to talk to some add-on developers on PC, and they've given me some general information, but that's all I have at this point. As I can, I'll try to reach out and ask people. If anybody out there knows anybody, has some information, send me a DM, let me know what's going on. All right, shall we move on to the next one here?
Yeah, that's fine. The next one is probably the one that I would consider as like, would be like my my pug roster, as in like not pug as in I've put it up in Group Finder, but pug as in I put up an ASAP trial for people to join, and I'm not interested in like super min maxing. So it's just basically the same setup, but the Rojo version. That's the gist of it.
Cool.
It's the
All right. Well, that's quick.
Yeah.
We can kind of, yeah. And I think for a lot of groups, not having two stacks. So for those who don't know, if you're running War Machine or Master Architect, and yeah, Wampus, as Lenny noted, thanks Lenny for getting in chat there. When we say one, like you can use the other. It just depends on what role. It gets a little convoluted because they're basically the same set. One is mag, one is stam. So yeah. Lyriel also asks, is there any chance that they'll change the skill lines or what skills are in various skill lines, or definitely they're gonna stay how they are? Lyriel, I think it's a pretty good chance that they don't move things around, but I don't know.
It's DOS, man.
Yeah.
The fact that it seems illogical to move stuff around means it could happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the best way to know is if we send somebody to their headquarters and see if anybody's asking someone to hold their beer for them while they get in there and change skill lines. Oh
Put it
God.
past them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll move on to the third one here then. Oh, we got a little bit different here. So this one, you're assuming a lot of crit on the DPS.
Yeah, so these are I've put the Arcblade other because I would be telling people to run Arcblade Sork here, but there's a few different variations because there's 3 separate skill lines that do crit. But essentially, this is like the my version of a roster with Rojo if the DPS are not basically running the 2 crit plus the Necro. So they have 2 crit lines, but they need pen, essentially.
Cool.
So these would typically probably be non-beam builds.
Okay. And so this is kind of what Miles talking about. It's we're trying to future proof. If Dazos does something crazy on Monday, and the builds get mixed up, then you might be running something like this. Or if you're in a composition where you're just wanting the beams aren't the best thing, this is what you might run. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it basically looks very similar, except there's no Incratus on the main tank. There's Tremor Scale, and I just moved Incratus to the Rojo healer and flicked off the Ozazan from the previous roster.
Cool. Yeah, guys, and with a lot of these rosters, I think with those who are a little bit more experienced with them, you kind of realize that hey, these monster sets, you can do a lot of different stuff with them. Like Nazare, pretty much anybody can wear it, but you're not going to put it except for the Colo person. And so, yeah, there's a better or worse place to put it, but it's flexible. Tremor Scale only can go on the main tank, or if for some reason, if you're really worried about the ads and not the whatever the main tank is taunting, but generally speaking, because Tremor Scale applies to whoever taunts. And gratis, you can pretty much put it on anybody. They just got to have a fire dot. So when we put stuff on your Spalder, you can really move it. It could be on the off tank, could be on the healers. And so there's a lot of situations where some of the stuff you might think it's PA. PA can go really kind of anywhere. There's a lot of stuff that can go anywhere. And so when we put it all on there, it's a lot to write out like PA or MK or, like the 50 other sets you might want to run. We just kind of put it on there. And and that's why when I'm trying to do all my videos, I'm trying to explain the why of everything, not just what to do, so that hopefully if I do a good job, that you guys will know oh, you can swap this out for something else. Most very experienced players, people that are doing raid comps and stuff like that, kind of know that already. And so there is a lot of stuff that's assumed because otherwise rosters would just, you've seen them. You've seen it when people try to outline everything completely and you're like, holy crap, this looks like a dissertation. And I just want to know what I'm running. And it can feel even more overwhelming to newer players when they see a raid comp like that. All right, should I pop up the fourth one here, Miles?
Sure.
Is there any? I just didn't want to. If there's anything else, Daedric, do you want to chime in on anything here before we move on?
Not specifically with the comp, but
yeah,
I do have.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the healers running infused potion reduction. So, what do healers currently run for your glyphs?
It really depends, right? Like you get a mixed bag of like I don't know. Like I want to be I don't know if it's like I don't know if this is toxic to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. You get a mixed bag of people that can't sustain that are like they're forced to run like recovery stuff, which like you don't need if you can not overcast things. Um, or you run weapon damage. That's basically the two schools of thought. You're like, oh, I can't sustain, I have to run recovery. If you can sustain, you run weapon damage. That's
Yeah,
basically it.
and yeah, and I'll add to that that like when you're running currently, whenever you're running, Pearls of El Nafe, you're trying to keep your mag down, so too much mag is often a problem. And so yeah, it's a mix and match. I typically recommend all infused, and then you just change your enchants on it to be more spell power um, or recoveries. And I would say also with the changes that the chances that depending on what skill lines you're running, more than likely your recovery has gone up significantly because a lot of the healing skill lines also have bonus recovery.
Yeah. I mean, in this scenario with the triple infused potion reduction, you can just like forget about worrying about recovery at all because you're getting your potion every 20 seconds. There's absolutely no way that you're worried about running out of mag.
Yeah. So just as a for instance, too, on the Dread Cell Reef hard mode group, I only run one increased weapon damage. I run one reduced spell cost, and I one stamina recovery. And the reason I do that is because one, I'm using a lot of stamina skills, so it's a little bit awkward, and you need to be able to roll dodge quite often. And I just don't want to troll the group because I died because I couldn't roll dodge or break free. Um, and the only reason I have the spell cost is actually like I wish I didn't have it, but there is a debuff to magic recovery at one point, and I just want to make sure again that I'm not trolling the group. And so for 90% or for 75% of the fight, I have more mag. That it's like a problem. I have too much mag. But I always want to make sure that when we get down to like execute and there's a resource debuff, I want to make sure that I'm not running out of mag for the group. Normally, I would run mostly weapon and spell power with no recoveries on a Nightblade, but other classes are different too. Nightblades are pretty good on their recoveries.
I don't think you have to worry too much because essentially, like the fact that, like for example, the fact that you get, like say on healer one, right, where they've now got the Warden Blade and Pla, all three of those lines have percent damage, percent healing increase bonuses.
Yeah,
So the fact that you're losing out on, running weapon damage in chance and reducing your heals is negated by the fact that the skill lines are buffing your healing now. And then you're also like, I don't need to worry about the sustain because I have my potion every 21 seconds.
yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of a no,
Chugging.
yeah, it's kind of fine. The only times where I think like, oh, it'll be a bit of a pain is in some of the niche scenarios, which happen a bit more often when you're doing the harder stuff where you're expecting healers to run like Swift for the speed, and it would kind of suck not having the Swift. But
Oh, yeah. Uh, were you going somewhere with that, Daedric?
I mean, Miles touched on it, but I was just wanting to see what you guys thought about how dropping the spell power enchants on your jewelry would reduce your heal output, but Miles made a good point about your heal passives also buffing it back up.
Yeah,
I still think you'd feel a heal reduction, but yeah, it might not be as bad as I was thinking.
yeah, I think you're right. Like I thought that initially, and I was like, there will be like say like on a like if we just look at your combat prayer burst heal, how much does it heal? It might be like a slight reduction, like the percentage increases might be slightly less than say like triple infused weapon damage glyphs, where you're missing out on now like 700 weapon and spell damage, and you're swapping that for like
I don't know.
12 or 14% more
Maybe.
increased healing. So there might be like a bit of a swing where like, hey, my combat prayer hits for, you
Yeah,
know, 1k less than it currently does. So instead of like 22k, it's hitting for 21k, which is not a big deal, but it's still there. But then it's also offset by the fact that like, oh, you have like for example, the healer one, it has access to budding seeds and ritual, and then your other healer also has budding seeds. So you also just have more of the good heal skills in the group as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when I was doing my healing, so I've made a couple of guides for healing for the new patch, and basically you can only fit 2 skill lines worth of skills on your bar in most situations. So there's more good heals that you can put on than you even have room on your bar, but you're still doubling the amount of class heals that you can put on your bar that are better than anything else. So I also just want to address a question Robert asked a minute ago, but Robert asked, is there a need for trial? Is there a need in trials for an AoE setup or a dot-based setup that's not beam-based? Robert, actually, I think we're going to have time in, and I'm going to hit these two guys up, and we're going to chat about DPS setups a bit, and what are some of the other options, or what are some interesting things that can be ran, just in very broad, sweeping terms. So I think we're going to get there for you. Jessica asks, if you can only farm CP and skill line in one class before the patch, which one would you do? I would say so. CP is across all of your characters, Jessica. So no worries there. And you really only need, if you get to like 800 or 900, you're good. Don't go grinding up a whole bunch of CP. It's not worth it. And even then, I would encourage you, like you'll get CP to a reasonable place by just playing the game for the most part, if you're doing all the other stuff you need to do instead of strictly grinding CP. But I would say an Arcanist. I don't know if you guys have a different answer.
I mean, depends what role and what
Mm.
class you already have. Like if you're wanting to DPS and you already have an
Hey,
Arcanist
Nani.
like leveled, then from the subclassing point of view, the first thing you should probably level is like the Nightblade skill lines. But it really depends, right?
Well, yeah, it depends on the base class. I guess I kind of, when I talked about that earlier, saying that like Nightblade is the one healing class that I think, Nightblade and Warden, I guess. And then for tanks, DK is the one class. But if you're an off tank, you probably don't want any DK skill lines, and you might not even want a
Yeah.
Crow skill line. So it's like, it's super weird. Like Warden is probably the off tank skill line, so you'd want a Warden. Um, yeah, the TLDR. But the good news is, Jessica, too, is that like, so these raid comps are optimized, and you're not going to be in a group that needs to be unless you're one of the, yeah, you're not, because the kind of people that are going to start the game and in 2 weeks be in an optimized group are the people that are like, oh yeah, I'll grind up an ult of every kind, no big deal. And those are Luna is a great example. Luna like picked up the game and she just like full speed ahead and like, yeah, I'll get one of everything. Like so if you're not like that, you're not going to want to get into a group where that's going to be an issue for you. Most groups at a lower level are going to be like, yeah, bring what you can, or like, hey, that's what you got, that's what you got. Like, you're going to be just fine. So any of those suggestions, pick the one of them that you like the most based on your class. But if you tell us your role, we could give you more specific advice. Cool. Yeah. Okay. I think we're good to maybe move on to the fourth one here. I'll pop that up. Here we go. Looks like this is going to be a modified version of the other ones. Is this just with War Machine and everything?
That is the Slayer version where your DDs still need pen, but no crit. All of them assume your DPS don't need the crit. So like, it's kind of a shame because there's a path setup that does quite well on the dummy. That's the DK Necro and something else. But it's basically dead because of the Pillager's nerf. Because that setup needs both crit and pen, which means it's like, okay, now you're gonna have to still manage major force, like the LE EC is not enough. So you need the force, which is just too hard. It means you miss out on a bunch of other ults. You still need the pen. So yeah, essentially every class has like in my mind, every class that's sort of viable for like end game pushing will have the 2 crit lines plus like one other, which will either be something that boosts them in purely single target like a Sork, or it'll be something like the Crow that helps with AoE and gives them the crit. But yeah, this is just a version of the Slayer setups that I would have if the DDs need pen. And I would just do it with Tremor Scale. If like you're in a situation where, I mean, it has the same caveat that the War Machine might have to move in place of Zone. depending on what the ulti-gen looks like. But yeah, same idea.
Okay, cool. Just because I tried Arcanist and didn't like it, wanted something easier. Jessica, if the Arcanist doesn't feel easy, then I don't know if you're following a build or something. Then we just need to get you a better build. There is a 1 bar Arcanist beam build on the website, and you should go with something like that. Actually, if you want something easier, I have an Arcanist 1 bar. Um, oh, I forgot what I called it, but I'll grab a link for you. But just look on the under Arcanist on the website, and there's one that it's the easiest thing in the world. Okay, you can beam and watch Netflix, and you still won't die. So I'll link something for you because an Arcanist is the easiest class, and if it feels hard, it's just because we don't have the right setup for you. I'll grab that real quick. All right. Well, excellent. I think we do have a bit of time. I think my watch is dying. Yeah, to chat. So, I didn't warn you guys ahead of time, but can I ask you a little bit about, or maybe I could talk a little bit about some of the various DPS setups we have going on. If you guys got thoughts, chime in, and if not, I can kind of kick us off here.
I mean, I've got thoughts, but you can go.
Okay. Yeah. So I think in some aspects, like there is a lot of groups are going to be running whatever the hell they want to run. There is a situation now, hopefully, with all heavy attack builds that they're going to be using the new mythic moving forward in any group content. So that buffs your heavy attacks by 50%. And even if you don't change your build at all, but you just swap out that mythic, you're probably going to get a DPS increase. There's going to be some better DPS setups as well. In those situations, we're kind of talking about that pug group situation. In most groups where you're doing really hard content, so literally hard modes, I think probably at this point, because any kind of non-hard mode, you can, as long as you have a decent build, you'll be able to do plenty of damage for those groups. You'll be just fine there. There are some specific builds, like we talked about a Corpse Buster build, that I think leans into Corpse Buster as a set that drops from the Infinite Archive specifically for Necromancers, and that can be really cool. It has really good cleave, really good AOE, and so you could see those type of builds. For an optimal group, or for a group really doing like hard modes and stuff like that, you're and honestly, even for just the average person, if you're not running a heavy attack build, the easiest thing is going to be an Arcanist beam build of some sort, and that might even be a 1 bar beam build. But the beam is one skill that you hit, and it lasts 4.5 seconds, which is 2.5 times as long as a heavy attack. So it requires less CPM, less clicks per minute than anything else. And so for most groups, just like it's been beams for the past 2 years, it's going to continue to be a beam build of some sort moving forward. And what exactly that looks like we'll have to see. But generally speaking, that's what we'll be seeing for DPS. In some of the sweatier groups, there might be a situation where there's not a lot of cleave, and you're just single target damage is what is king. And there are some setups potentially. And someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are at this point that will parse more than a beam build. That is very niche, and it's for people that are watching right now so that they can offer their own takes or to kind of get some ideas or whatever. They're not learning anything from what we're telling them, basically, for the most part. That's the kind of groups that those people are in. I think, yeah. I think that's more or less what I have to say on the subject.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think we're in the same camp. I think like general everyday use. Like if you're like, oh, I want to do my like veteran trials. I've got like a group. They're not super sweaty, but we still like to. We're trying to get through some of the hard modes. We still like to sort of push ourselves, but we're not gonna turn it into a part-time job. I think that like it's Arc Blade, Necro, Beam build all the way. That'll still get you like on the even with the nerfs, that's still getting people like 155, 160k sort of department passes on the dummy. And then if you're trying to if you're in a group that's trying to just go hell for leather on the single target, then there's other options that can do like 180 plus K single target, which is like it's a reasonably big jump, but it's like for that extra 20K, say, it is quite a substantial ask in terms of player skill to pull it off. So like if you just pick up that setup and you're not used to essentially using like a light attack build, you're gonna do way worse than you would with the beam anyway. So the beam stays king for a lot of people.
Yeah. Jessica, that link that I just posted is to my Arcanist solo build. That's what it's called. That is not really designed for trials. It'll do just fine in a dungeon. You can actually solo dungeons with it on veteran. But try that. Give that a try. When you're low level, the game can be a little bit difficult. Once you get a little bit higher level, overland stuff becomes purely like trivial. But maybe give that a shot, and then come by the Discord if you have any questions, or if you're still having problems. We have help channels in the Celebrity. We have help channels in the Discord, guys. And if you want advice on a heavy attack build, we can give it to you. If you want advice on a meta DPS build, we can give it to you. If you want advice on a solo build, we can give it to you. So just come by the Discord, and that's the best place to, because a lot of that will require back and forth. We might ask for more information with you, and it's a lot easier than doing it in like the comment section of a YouTube video. Daedric, what are your thoughts on DPS right now, man?
Sorry about that, but
Oh, no worries. I was just asking what your thoughts are on DPS right now. I can chat a little bit here if you want to compile your thoughts for a second.
what you initially said, pretty much where I'm at with it, where
What
most
up,
people are going
Casey?
to be using the beam build. It's going to do way more damage.
Yeah.
And then you got the
No, please go ahead.
and then you got the single target setup that does like about 10k more. And you'll probably see that in niche setups. Miles, did you talk about how you do trash on this if you're running that instead of beam build?
Oh,
No, but I was going to, yeah. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, because there's still, it's kind of interesting. There's still the option on these so I see Robert Miller asks, does anyone test Arcblade Sork versus Arcblade Necro since the nerfs? And the answer is yes. The Arcblade Sork is like 15 to 20k ahead in single target at the top end, and that Arcblade Sork actually has like, you can still use the beam, for example, in trash and in like AoE fights, and get essentially the same damage as an Arcblade Necro sort of beam setup, or very close to, just by, as long as you make sure your base class is Arcanist. You can then use the disease damaged Pestilent Burst with a Crux as the class script in place of what your normal Flayer would be like for trash, and then you can still actually just run a beam build and flex it in where you need to. So like,
And that's Soul
that's kind of why
Burst
I ended up.
from the Soul Magic skill
Yeah.
line, for those who don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And it's quite, like it is great. So you can have the option of, I'm pure single target, but I can flex to beam and cleave for trash, or if there's one boss fight in the whole trial where you need some cleave, you can do it like that as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Which
And
is great.
yeah. And so just so everybody knows, when you're not running the beam, what you're doing is you're changing from Sveliark's flail, which is the flail that everybody's used to, right? Heals you for a little bit, and you're changing to the other morph, which is called Tentacular Dread. So if you hear about a tent build or something like that, and what that does is, it, instead of generating Crux, it consumes Crux, and you use that on pretty much all, maybe not all, but most 90% of the non-beam builds are still using Arcanist skill line on a DPS, and instead of using Tentacular Dread, you're using, or I'm sorry, instead of using Seveliar's Flail, you're using a Tentacular Dread instead. And then even if that's a single target setup, what Miles is saying is, again, you're just going to swap that out on trash. You'll run the beam because you have access to it anyways, and you're running Tentacular Dread, so you need some way of generating Crux for the beam, and you're going to run the Soul Burst with disease damage and then the class skill modifier in trash there. Just to make that really clear for those who might be new, guys, if we're ever talking about something and you're like, I don't know what this means, please just ask. Just because sometimes we can get talking with jargon and lingo and stuff, and it's not something everybody should understand. We're happy to go over it and stuff for you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think purely because of that interaction, a lot of the groups that I might run with or put together will have people playing Arcblade Sork for that single target sort of burn. And like in the less, AoE heavy trial. So I think of something like Sunspire, Kind's Aegis, Vhoff, maybe even Rockgrove, to be honest. Dreadsail, where you're like, oh, okay, there might be one sort of AoE fight in the trial, but the rest are all single target, and the single target fights are the ones that matter. Like Teleria is the most important one for DSR, so you're like, well, if we can optimize to have 140k more group DPS on Teleria, then we will, so that we can skip matrons and things like that. So I think that will be like, I mean, who knows? We have to see, but I think that will be like the school of thought, and then you can just substitute in the scribing skills to make the beam builds work alternatively if you need to use the beam in the trial situation. But then for general use, I still think the Arc Blade Necro, just beam from base, is great.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, that was the other thing with that Arc Blade Sork thing. That other interaction that all three of us were talking about the other night is that new mythic, the heavy attack mythic, also opens up a lot of opportunities if you put the Sork in one of your 3 lines.
Yeah.
To do some crazy high burst fights for things that don't have that much health, because it buffs power overload, which the Sork has in that line.
Power overload.
So people can.
Power overload, for those who don't know, is the ultimate, and it's like the shocky hands, and that is considered a heavy attack if you're clicking and holding, and it's the ultimate that it consumes ult as it for the duration.
Yeah, and so like in that, say, Arcblade Sork setup, you'll get to use the power overload heavy attack for like 15-16 seconds before you run out of ult, and if you have that mythic on in that setup, your heavy attacks will hit for 250k per tick of that like overload, which it ends up being insanely high, like burst damage. So there's the potential to add in some nuke strats if you go down that route with the group, but obviously that's not going to be for a pug group either.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually one of the serious problems that we haven't heard anything about from ZOS as of yet, is that some of the older content for a lot of groups, that not even like super sweaty groups, but groups that they're like, hey, we're going to try to optimize. We've been playing the game for a while. We kind of know, for years or whatever, or most of us are. So we kind of know what's going on. Like we try to do stuff that's optimal, but not super sweaty. And they're going to be able to go into this older content and absolutely wreck it, like break things, because they can, it's kind of like the 3-pad burn on Rakat in a Mauve Lorcage. That's become a lot easier for people to do. Like most groups can probably do it on Vet now, if they, if they're not a pug but like a decent, group that runs together, and it's not too hard to do it even on hard mode, to where you just burn through it.
Yeah, people have got that down to like a 1-pad burn.
Yeah,
which is crazy. So like, yeah, be insane.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's and dungeons. I mean, I keep telling the story. You got me in a dungeon because I normally don't run them, but the 3 DPS 1 tank. I'm working on a build that's, it's a DPS tank, and you still are just as tanky as you could be, but you're also DPSing. So you're basically got 4 DPS, and in dungeons you just delete mechanics because they're not designed for that much damage, and it kind of breaks things, honestly, and is something that can kind of be a little bit unfortunate. Um, I hope they address it. No problem,
Yeah,
Jessica. Have a
dungeons
good
are
night.
probably even a little more
Glad
broken
we
because
could help.
they've tried to pull back the DPS insanity with the pillagers pearls nerf, but pillagers and pearls are not a factor in 4-man dungeons. So 4-man dungeon like damage is crazy high now.
Deja, I think you were going to chime in there.
Yeah, I guess my main question is, what would you want them to change to like address that?
I mean, I think nothing. I'm like, whatever. Just make harder stuff, eh? Like, you know what I mean?
That's what I was thinking. Give us more
Yeah,
like health scaling on some of the older trials. That would be fun.
Mm.
yeah, a little bit of health scaling could be fun. I think that, I mean, really the problem is, and maybe we can transition here out of this. I think we've kind of covered things pretty well for a live stream. Maybe transition. So with, so I think the problem in ESO has long been that the gap between normals and veteran is it's not a step up, it's a cliff, and most people can't get up that cliff. And once you get up that cliff, you're on a plateau and everything's fine. It's not a big deal. And then going from veteran to hard mode is another cliff. Um, and that has long been the issue. And what you want in games is progression that is smooth, as smooth as you can. And there's nothing like that in ESO. And so what they've done is they've made normals for people who are, very casual and, um, they're walking around for the story. They press one button on their bar, and it's probably not even a good button. They don't even know what most of their skills do. They um, don't know how most of the mechanics in the game work, which is not necessarily their fault. The game, well, actually, that really gets my point, which is the game doesn't give anybody feedback. I think Zoss would almost consider that like a bad thing or like toxic, but in most games, so I mean, you can pick any number of games, but I'll pick Helldivers. If you jump into Helldivers is a game, there's 10 difficulties, and if you go into a Helldivers mission that is a higher difficulty than you're ready for, if you jump to level 10, you're going to be dead constantly, and it sucks being dead. And so you're going to go, hey, I shouldn't be here. This isn't really fun. No one needs to kick you from the group. You're going to be like, no, I need to drop down. What was I thinking? I mean, that was fun to try, but like, let me go down to an easier difficulty. There's no granularity with ESO. There's 3 difficulty levels, and there are gigantic gaps in between them as far as the difficulty. If you have basic gear and basic setups, a child can do Overland without much difficulty until they get to like a world boss.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like it's part of the. I think it's like a blessing and a curse, right? Like part of the thing that makes it so nice is that it's got that like sideways progression, but then part of the problem with that is that it makes like everything in the game entirely skill based. So like in terms of how difficult they can make the content, when it makes it really hard to tailor it for people because like, oh, on the one hand, we want it to be challenging for people that are very, very good, but we also don't want it to be ridiculously impossible. So they like separate it into these tiers. But then it means that like, oh, there's no natural transition up the tiers. I mean, they could probably do a better job of it. Yeah.
I mean, I think I could do a lot better job of it personally. I like
Yeah.
I want the game to be accessible to everybody. I want the Overland experience to be there for people. It's just like separation of PvP and PvE. To add more levels of difficulty requires more work, and Zoss is not willing to do that work because I think they're unwilling or unable to manage more people than they currently have. Is the impression I get, and so there's only so much work the set number of people that are there can do, and anything more than that, they just physically can't do. And so they pick to, and they've done. Guys, I'm not making this stuff up. They've gone like when the archive came out, they went on a big tour. Several
Sorry
of people.
to,
What's that?
sorry to jump in. I've got to jump out.
Oh
So
yeah, no
sorry
worries,
to
man.
tell you.
Thanks for
But
coming, Miles.
thanks,
I appreciate it.
thanks for the chat, boys. I'll catch you later.
Cool. All right, catch
See
you
ya.
later. Yeah. So that's one of the things is that they they chose things that were they're kind of simpler, kind of a little bit easier. And yeah, it's interesting. Miles said here that he thinks that the Pillagers nerf was with the intent of bringing down the DPS in a way, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I think that's a really good idea. I've thought the same thing. I don't know if that's it. I tend to not assign rationale to ZOS because I think that sometimes stuff is just being done and they don't know enough about the game to realize how much of a mistake the changes they're making are. I would say with the changes to Pillager's Profit, what it has done is made the game a lot more difficult for veteran dungeons and veteran trials instead of easier. And it has also greatly restricted the number of options to play pseudo optimally, not even fully optimally, like to play more optimally. You kind of have to go with certain things. You saw with all of these setups here that pretty much all of us are saying, hey, you got to take this blade class skill line and run all three of your enchants on your jewelry infused with potion reduction jewelry, or potion reduction enchants, I'm sorry, which is limiting the number of options greatly for the average player, which again, this restricts and makes it more difficult for players to get into harder content because you want to play the build you want to play. And before, with Pillagers the way it was, honestly, you could have picked any 3 skill lines you wanted and you would have been just fine. And now it's like, no, you really got to pick, like, you're far more limited on the number of options. And so I think that's the big problem. Daedric, I don't want to keep you, man. If I was impolite to Miles, I know that he had a I guess we have the same run at 6 o'clock. Is that what you're kind of hanging out till?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, man. You gotta go. Like, I won't even say bye because you're gonna be the next run. Don't be afraid to dip, man. I'll just be like, hey, Daedric, and you'll be like, not there. Tyler,
Stick around.
all right, cool. Tyler Tracy says they need more in-game guides. For example, this boss in the dungeon has these abilities and describe how the fight goes. I feel like that would help the more casual player that doesn't want to look stuff up outside the game. Yeah, Tyler, I would 100% agree that there's so much more they could do in game that would really help. And also designing the game in such a way that it gives you feedback, right? So, what happens when you go into a game and you die and you're like, oh, that sucks? Now, if the game didn't, if you don't know why and you're not really understanding, you go in and you die, it sucks. Most of us are like, this sucks. I don't like this game. I'm just going to go play something else. We don't want that experience, right? And ZOS doesn't either. But if you go in and you are doing stuff and you die, then you go, oh, but you know why? Or you kind of understand, oh, like everything's going fine. I have all my health and then I get one shot by this thing. Why is that? And that means that they need to telegraph mechanics and need to show you that, like, oh, make it very clear that you just don't quite have enough damage for this. So you got to do a little bit more damage to be able to get through this content. And if they did that, then people would figure stuff out. And it doesn't need to even be, I agree with you, like going outside of the game. Like a lot of people just will not do that. But it's an MMO. Like there's places where people could ask questions. The game could provide you help and stuff like that. But again, all of that stuff requires more care with design. And I honestly just don't see ZOS ever doing that. Nuibi says, I'm since 3 months of work in another country and don't know if multi-classing is out or not, and want to know if I can play my Nightblade healer or if he's outdated. Noibi, it comes out on June 2nd, so not yet. And then it'll take us everybody weeks to grind up the other skill lines to have multi-classing be a thing that is needed for trials and stuff like that. But absolutely, if you are not multi-class, there will be a huge gap in what you're doing and what everybody else is doing. And another thing, Robert Miller said earlier, and I'm sorry, Robert, I missed this. Actually, I read it. I didn't read it out loud, though. Multi-classing is going to widen the gap even more between sweaty players and everyone else. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think that ZOS is trying to do the opposite. And I think that they just don't understand the game. So the biggest problem, and Tyler pointed this out, the biggest problem between people, it's the skill gap. That's the biggest problem in ESO. It's a huge skill gap, and there's not much of a way for you to learn to get better. That's the problem with the cliffs that I'm talking about. It's not like you can gradually get better. You can, but a lot of the content, when you up the difficulty, it goes way higher. And in some ways, not necessarily. Like you can do Mails from Arena now, and it's a lot easier than it used to be. So that's a great place for a new player to start, to learn how to get out of AoEs, to learn how to do mechanics, to learn a handful of things. The problem is, as a new player, you have no idea where to start, and the game doesn't offer any guide on progression for you. And so if you just queue up for a random veteran dungeon, can you imagine? I mean, imagine the difference between Unhallowed Grave versus Fungal Grotto. And if you're a new player, you don't know that there's a huge difference between those two things. Nothing in the game will tell you that. And so it's really hard for a new player to progress, I think. Daedrix, you got any thoughts on this, man? I'm kind of riffing on this stuff, but
Yeah, I think the main problem with the game's difficulty, at least like trying to do in-game stuff, is the game literally gives you no feedback as to how you're doing. Like, you basically don't engage with combat in a meaningful way at all until you get into dungeons, and even then, normals are like really easy, so you won't even face like any pushback to like vets, and that's a lot of time. Like, you've already spent probably at least 100 hours in the game or something when you're doing vet dungeons for the first time, and the game not tell you at all if you're playing it correctly. Like, that's pretty crazy.
yeah. Well, and then if you go into like a new DLC dungeon, you might get wrecked. Like you probably will get wrecked. Like you're not going to be able to kill some of the world boss or the world bosses or the dungeon bosses in even in like some of the older zones like Necrom. You're not going to enjoy that experience if you're by yourself, unless you're following a build guide.
Yeah.
Van Larkin says, in-game chat would be a great way for people to share information about just about everything. Feels like a missed opportunity. Yeah. Are you talking about like proximity chat type thing, Van? I guess there's several things. I mean, you can type a bit. I think that the consoles have proximity chat, don't they? Or is it just group chat? They have group chat for sure. I don't know if they have proximity chat, but yeah, that's fair. And I think getting into a guild in an MMO and stuff like that, but I think the biggest problem is I think they're trying to adjust things in the game to make it. They're always trying to raise the floor and lower the ceiling. They've been talking about that for years at this point. Group voice chat, yeah, they have that on consoles, Van. But yeah, that's fair. I don't know how it goes over there, but they do. But they're trying to raise the floor, lower the ceiling. I think that's great. Like I'm all for it. It's for those who don't know. And I should have led with this, guys. So I'm sure the people that would have got triggered have probably already left, unfortunately. I can actually see a dip when I started talking about some of this stuff. But I run a Trials Guild where all we do is try to help people get into in-game. So that's what I spend a great deal of. So when I talk about this stuff, understand where I'm coming from as someone who's like trying to help, the ESO community and help people get into in-game and stuff like that. That's what most of my videos are for. And I mean, I do other stuff and do sweatier stuff or whatever, but like I'm someone who often plays with like sweatier people or kind of leans that way, but I'm always just trying to actually help people that are at a lower level to get to wherever they want, but just try to help them out and so that they have fun enjoying the game. So PC does have voice chat, and it's a setting you have to set up. Oh, but it's a setting you have to set up. I actually had no idea, Tyler, because everybody just uses Discord and stuff. Yeah, that's interesting. I had no idea. I would be so weirded out if like someone started talking to me on PC. I'd be like, "What the hell is going on?" I just want to say thanks again. I know Lenny isn't here, but I want to say thanks to him. Daedric, thanks for hanging out and chatting with us, man. I think it was some really good information. I think a lot of people probably really appreciate it and benefited from it. So thank you both. I think at this point we'll probably wind down this. So we got a Godslayer group going in just a second. So I'm going to hop in there and then we'll probably take just a brief. We've been going for a couple hours here, so probably take a brief moment and AFK for a second here, kick you guys to a commercial, and then we'll come back. And then after that, we got the Dread Cell Reef. So we got another at least 4 hours of streaming, and I really want to get on some Helldivers later on. So it might be another 6 hours of streaming here. So yeah, thanks, Robert. Thanks for dropping in. And Tyler. No, none of us knew that voice chat was a thing. Daedric, you're off taking right in this next group.
Yes, sir.
Necro OT, cool, cool. All right, guys. Well, I am going to kick everybody. Well, I'm going to kick YouTube to an ad because I can control that a bit, and then I'm gonna give you guys some bunnies to look at, and I'll be right back, and then we'll go ahead and hop in the group. And honestly, this is a Nani group, and Nani, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. So we got to hop over. Thanks, Aeon. I appreciate it. That's cool. Voice chat on console sounds like a 1990 cell phone call to hell. Oh my god. Oh man. Aeon, the saddest part about that is that I don't know that everybody has a reference for that, and that is unfortunate. Back when a cell phone meant that you had a big old bag. Oh man. If anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, oh man, what was that? It was like Charlie Sheen in some Wall Street movie way back in the day. They made a second one. Anyways, they had one in that movie, I remember, and it's hilarious. My mom had one. All right, guys, we'll be right back. I'm going to show you some bunnies in the meantime. Hope you enjoy. All right, guys, I am back. Give me just one moment here to get everything set up. I don't know if I want to. I kind of want to just leave you guys with the bunnies. All right, we'll get rid of some of this stuff, and we will hop into the game. All right, man. We'll catch you there in a second. Peace. Guys, here on YouTube, so if you're on Twitch, you don't got to do anything. You're in the right place. You're all good to go. For everybody in, oh, I left my gear. Oh, great. I gotta switch characters. For everybody on YouTube, give me just 1 second, and I'll kick you over, guys. It should kick you to the next stream, but YouTube is like 50-50 on this. Sometimes it'll kick you over, but it won't. It'll like tell you the stream is starting soon, even though I've already started. So you might have to hit refresh, or you might even have to find me manually. I'm sorry about that. It's just the only way to separate the VODs on YouTube automatically. So I'm actually going to do that, I think right now, and we'll be right back. Chatbot will be disabled for just a second while we do that. And if you're on Twitch, just hang tight. Nothing to do there.